Hey, this is Brent Jensen. You're listening to No Sleep Till Sudbury, the show where we talk about the music that makes your skin vibrate. This show is brought to you by Pariah Pickups. What you want, what you need, what you love. Check them out at pariahpickups.com. And to support the No Sleep Till Sudbury show on Patreon, visit patreon.com/Brent Jensen Music. This week I welcome to the show Martha Johnson and Mark Gane, founding members of the legendary Martha and the Muffins. They're here to talk about their new album, Marthology, in and outtakes. Check it out. Martha and Mark, it's a true pleasure to have you on the show. How are you guys doing?
We're fine, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. The weather's not the best right now, but summer's over. I'm never happy about that, but Christmas is coming.
No, it's definitely over as I look out the window here.
I know. Yeah, pretty blustery. I'm happy to be talking to you guys today. I've been a fan since my youth, Echo Beach. It's still a favorite of mine. I love the fact that you guys named yourselves Martha and the Muffins to distance yourself from the more aggressively named art punk and punk bands in the landscape around that time.
We might have gone a little too far, though.
Well, it was supposed to only be a temporary name, though, right?
Yes. I wish it had been, but, you know, people say that if we hadn't had that name, everything would be different, you know, and maybe we would have never done a record because the person who signed this may probably caught the name right away.
Oh.
Was intrigued. So you never know, what the situation would be if you change one element.
Yeah.
Ironically, like when we first started going over to England, at that time they didn't have anything called muffins. They had tea cakes.
Oh.
But they had some kid show called Muffin the Mule, which we, of course, never got over here. But when we went in to do an interview, they go, oh, Muffin the Muffins, oh, Muffin the Mule, and they get all teary-eyed, you know, like that old.
And the other thing they did was when we first came over to play, the first time we played it, I think it was at London University, they billed us as Tilly and the Tea Cakes. They didn't want to let the muffins out of the bag.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a secret gig or something.
Oh, I didn't know any of this stuff. Wow. That's cool.
History.
Yeah, it was all a long time ago, Brent.
Well, that would have been 79, 80, right?
Yeah.
It was late 1980.
Wow. Well, regardless of that, though, Echo Beach stood strong. It was an international hit. It was huge.
Yeah, it was big everywhere except the United States, where they messed it up. The record company was just starting up in the U.S., Virgin, and they didn't have it together yet. And they gave it to Atlantic, and they didn't know who the hell we were, so they just got lost in the shuffle. And I think things would have been quite different if it had been released, because it went top 10 everywhere it was released, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, you had a few other songs from Metro Music, I believe, that played on American radio.
Yeah, we were sort of culty down there, you know, and it wasn't like we were ignored. I mean, we did get lots of press, and when we played down there, it was always interesting because you could tell what cities were behind you radio-wise, and I know, like, both coasts were really good, and we played Washington a number of times, and, you know, there were literally, like, lineups around the record store where we were doing signing, and we were totally shocked. Like, we didn't expect that at all, and it was all about the radio.
We played with Simple Minds. So after we did our set, half the audience left.
No, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we had a big audience in Washington.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that
preceded
either.
The Simple Minds, who weren't very nice on stage. They gave us about 2 feet.
And this is around the same time period, obviously, right? 1981.
Yeah, this was the dance park era band.
Yeah.
So that would be 83. That particular gig, anyway. I know we played there earlier.
That was your fourth record.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's kind of a funny thing that a lot of people don't know either, is that Daniel Lanois' sister was actually in the band for a little while.
That's right. Yeah, when Carl Finkel, our original bass player, left, I had a friend from the Ontario College of Art who was waitressing at the time, and I was talking to her, and I said, you know, we need a new bass player, and she said, oh, well, I know this woman who's waitressing with me that's a bass player, and we went, oh, okay, so we met her, and we liked her, and she seemed to be pretty good on bass, and through that, she said, I've got 2 brothers in Hamilton that have a studio. And this was just as we were writing This Is the Ice Age. because that's when she joined. She joined on the third album.
Mm-hmm.
We went, oh yeah, okay. So, we went and demoed those songs at Grant Avenue. And of course, Dan was there and his brother Bob was running the studio as well. And we got on so well that we decided to do that album with him. And we did the next two with him as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then he went on to work with you too and Peter Gabriel and everybody else. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Huge.
So you now are here today, all these years later, to talk about your brand new record. It's called Marthology, In and Outtakes, and it dropped on November 5th. The album spans 35 years of recordings, including the 30th anniversary version of your Juno award-winning single, which is Echo Beach. And it's also got some alternate versions of album tracks. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was our manager, Graham Stair's idea, actually, and he'd been bugging us for years. Well, I shouldn't say bugging, but he was suggesting that we do what he called an odds and sods album of all the stuff. We'd listen to these things on and off over the decades and go, yeah, that's pretty good. Why didn't we ever put that out? Or why didn't that go on that, particular album? And the timing is such that we kind of put this out now because we will be releasing a new Martha and the Muffins album, hopefully in 2022, an entirely new album. And
yes, new songs.
Yeah, new songs.
Cool.
It was Graham's idea to put Marthology out as sort of a way to reintroduce people to the band, or maybe people hadn't heard us before or thought we were long gone or whatever. And so this is sort of a way of saying, hey, we're still alive, and next year we're putting out a real album.
Well, that's great. I think a lot of people are really going to be very interested in this. Echo Beach, as I said, is a staple. The other day I heard it on the radio and I actually stayed in the car after I got home just to listen to the end of it. So
that's great.
I've always loved the song. I mean, there's obviously a nostalgic aspect to it because it came out when I was a really young kid, but like it's just... I still love it. I still love Black Stations, White Stations, This is good music. It's classic stuff.
Well, thanks for that. And, as songwriters, we are still, after 40 years, constantly amazed at how you do these things. And, of course, in the early days, we didn't really know what we were doing at all. And to have particularly Echo Beach, but, Black Stations and some other ones go out into the world, hit listeners in ways that you could have never predicted. And then, here we are talking with you, and you're saying you were, very young, and when you first heard it, you still hear it. I mean, that really, honestly, blows our minds. So
Wow.
We're not jaded that way at all.
I'm glad. That's good. That's a good thing. It's always disappointing to meet somebody that you admire and have them turn out to be jaded or cynical or,
Yeah, it's very disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. What was it like for you guys to go through the old material and decide what should appear on this record? What kind of thinking went into that?
Well, we went to our trusty computer and just found things that we had forgotten about a lot, in many cases. And some things were obvious, the 30th anniversary of Echo Beach, we wanted to have that song represented, but in a different way. So we chose to put that on, and it's quite a nice version of the song, I think, because it's got it's kind of sad sounding and a little bit and nostalgic still, but in a different way because people are older, people who were young when the song first came out. So it's got a bit of a melancholy feel to it. And then, there were other things like there's a song called Talking Through My Hat. And that was particularly adventurous vocally, and I was quite interested in having people hear that because it showed a side of my singing that never really represented it. I don't think on any of the Martha and the Muffins albums. So
what, you imitating a trumpet?
Yeah.
I think it's one of your best vocals, and that would have been. I mean, that was definitely from the get-go a song that I thought had to go on there, even though it's basically an uncompleted demo.
And there's a lot of references to Echo Beach, actually, like Summer of Song. That was sort of reflecting on what that summer of 1980 was like for us, because it was the high point of the success of Echo Beach. And the touring and the press and all the attention, and the band having all the strife as well.
Yeah.
all represented in that song. And then the other one I wrote first, like, On a Silent Summer Evening. That also is a reference to Echo Beach.
We should have been the Beach Boys.
Why? I don't get it.
There's a lot of beach references.
Oh, beach.
Or beach girls. I don't know. Yeah.
Well,
we have to wear those striped shirts. So.
That's right. Well, I could do that.
That is a good segue into your songs, actually, because one of you do have a Beach Boys song on your list. Are you guys ready to talk about the songs that make your skin vibrate?
Sure.
Yeah.
So we'll start
with
one. Well, that's one of them. So we'll start with Martha. Your first one is Laura Mvula and Green Garden.
Yeah, I discovered that song just by accident. I actually can't remember how I found it. Looking for something to play, and I don't know why it came up, but it's a fabulous song rhythmically, and the phrasing of the vocal is amazing. She's got a great voice, and then all the chorus vocals. It's so unpredictable where they're going to go to next, and it just makes my spine tingle.
Yeah, no, me too.
Does it make your skin vibrate?
My spine tingle. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah, I guess so. But even talking about it, it makes me sort of shiver a bit.
Yeah, no,
I hope other people enjoy it. It's a really good song.
It is. I had heard of her before. She's English, I think, and her dad is Jamaican, I believe. Great percussion in the song, great harmonies. You're right. It's good soul performance. Yeah,
it's funny because I listened to some of her other songs, and they're nothing like this Green Garden. It seems to be an anomaly, and I'm glad she did it.
Yeah.
She got a very interesting voice.
Oh, she certainly does, for sure. Yeah. Bob Marley is next, Martha, and Waiting in Vain.
Yeah, Waiting in Vain. I love that song. I've loved that song ever since it first came out. I saw Bob Marley in Toronto at Convocation Hall.
Wow.
That was many, many years ago. It was the 70s. There were two concerts. She was doing two shows back to back. The audience who were in the first show wouldn't leave for a lot of them. There was a bit of a row about that. I remember that.
Isn't that kind of funny how they used to do that? The Rolling Stones did that when they were in Toronto too. They played two shows. So sometimes they would do like a matinee and then an evening show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they don't do that anymore much anyway.
No.
Well, in those days, and Convocation Hall is just sort of open seating too. It's not very controlled. So it was a bit hairy.
Yeah.
The other version of that song that I really like is the one that Annie Lennox does.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
It's a really good version too.
Yeah.
But Bob Marley is amazing. I think his songwriting is just so awesome.
He's an interesting case because you think about bands and you can just kind of name almost any band and think, yeah, there's a band like them and they are X or Y. But when you say you can't really say that about Bob Marley, I find,
No, he doesn't fit any pigeonhole.
It was very diverse.
It's so melodic too. His melodies are so beautiful.
Yeah, I've always been a big fan.
Yeah, melodies are important to me in songwriting. I like a catchy melody, but I also like a melody that moves and grows as the song progresses.
So just a side question. So with Echo Beach, then, when you're writing that song, when you're thinking about melodies, how did that come about?
Well, Mark actually wrote that song.
Okay.
So I didn't have anything to do with melodies. And he was very strict about me singing exactly what he wrote, what he wanted. I couldn't play around with it too much.
Yeah, it was a real...
early days. He was a dictator.
It was a real little snot-nosed dictator back then. But
yeah.
And it's funny you mention that because as popular as that song is, it's not one of our, if you break down the melody, it's not that much of a melody, really. No. It's like da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da, it's very much a part of its time. And, to go back to that, we didn't really know what we were doing theme. I really didn't know what I was doing. That was a very early song. As you may have noticed, there's no chorus until the very end because I didn't know what I was doing. It wasn't that I wasn't going, why don't I be really clever and put the chorus only at the end? Obviously I grew up with pop music and loved it, but when I was doing those early songs, the structure was sort of unconscious, really.
Well, you didn't really know much about structure of songwriting, and you grew up with the Beatles too. The Beatles didn't have a straight format all the time.
That's right.
Well, they were unbelievably.
They were so clever with their arrangements.
But see, that's what I thought you were doing, Mark, with that. I thought that you held the chorus off till the very end just to kind of break up the monotony of verse, chorus, solo, verse, chorus.
I love this theory, Brent, and you can chop the previous part of this interview out. So, and then I'll say that in my own words. And
sounds very clever.
It'll sound really clever.
All right, we'll do some editing. Okay, the Beach Boys now, Martha. God Only Knows.
Yeah, I just love that song. The Beach Boys aren't necessarily one of my favorite bands. I mean, they're good and talented and everything, but I just love that song. Again, it's the melody that I love, and the harmonies, of course.
The harmonies.
It's very classical.
It's very classical, Mark's saying.
Yes. Yeah, the structure of it, like if you just take the melody, it could have been something that, Mozart could have written. Like, it's very sophisticated, and I mean, he's a genius anyway, Brian Wilson. I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was almost a musical savant, in my opinion. He was otherworldly in terms of just being able to come up with things that nobody else would have.
Yeah, and those arrangements, like even California Girls, just that little intro, that weird little sound, and it's sort of slightly out of tune, and then it descends into the song. Like, the arrangements are phenomenal.
Yeah.
And given the fact that he was deaf in one ear, it's incredible. Like, he was doing all this monophonically. So, astounding, really.
Adding a theremin to Good Vibrations, just
brilliant. Yeah, and then those cellos at the end, they go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fantastic.
Oh yeah, yeah. The guy was a genius. Judy Garland is next. Over the Rainbow. This is a great pick. 1939 this came out. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I know. It came out the same year that Gone with the Wind came out. They were both nominated for Academy Awards. I think that was when the Technicolor came out as well.
Well, there's that story about how it became commercially available, I think, while they were shooting The Wizard of Oz. And that's where they got the idea that when she got out and landed in Oz, everything turned into color.
Yeah, it was just amazing.
Ah.
It's a scary film, though.
Oh, it is.
When you're a kid.
It's dark. Yeah, it's definitely dark.
Yeah. Those monkeys, those flying monkeys. But I love the part where she sings Over the Rainbow, and she falls backwards into the hay.
Yeah.
So it's so Hollywood.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And it's interesting that, gazillions of people have done that, but there was something...
What, fallen into hay?
No, not... I think... Okay, millions of people have fallen into the hay, but not while singing Over the Rainbow. But what I was going to say was there's something about her version. There were other singers that were, maybe even technically better, but she nailed that feeling. And, it just sums up all the feelings that were welling up during the Great Depression,
Yeah.
Like, all that song kind of crystallizes all the hopes of a better world.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point.
It's very uplifting.
Yeah, very moving, her version.
And I love her voice. I just love her voice, too.
Yeah.
She's got a very pure voice. She's got a nice vibrato, and she's not shrieking the high notes or anything. And it's kind of a tragic life. The film Judy is quite an interesting film, too.
Yeah.
To watch. I think she won an Academy Award for the performance.
Who played it? I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
She was really good.
Yeah. But anyways, I love that song.
Mm-hmm. Oh, me too. Your last song, Martha, the Beatles, 8 Days a Week.
Yeah, it was hard to choose a Beatles song, but they influenced had such an impact on my youth and also my songwriting as well, I think. And I'm revealing my age here, but I was very young, but I saw the Beatles 3 times at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto.
Wow, really?
So.
What was
I'm that
like?
old.
Oh.
But I'm glad I am that old because it was quite an experience. The first time I saw them, I think I screamed. The second time, I cried. And the third time, I just listened.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Me maturing.
Yeah.
I was very young, but it had a big influence on
I'm
me.
sure.
And I look at I've been watching some of the live footage that's come out from 1963 and 1965.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really good players. They really played well.
Oh, they certainly
very
did.
tight. I mean, they played so much, I think, that they were really, really strong as musicians, too.
Yeah, we often talk a lot about putting in your 10,000 hours as a band, and back then that was...
And they did that in Hamburg, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the Camera Club, yeah.
But this one footage that I was watching, Paul's introducing or is doing something, talking to the audience, and the girls are still screaming, and John tells them to shut up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's very funny.
Wow.
Do they? Do they shut up?
Yeah, they do for about 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, there were times where they couldn't even hear themselves play, I believe, right? Like Shea Stadium.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons they stopped touring.
Yeah.
It's just pointless,
That's unbelievable
Quite
to consider.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
I know. The sound is amazing of thousands of young women under the age of 14 screaming.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like, because I know I wasn't watching that with you, but I was in the other room, and I thought, we have to use that sound somewhere. It's unbelievable, just this wall. It's not white noise, but it's just like this wall.
But I was beside myself with love for the Beatles. I had posters all over my room.
Oh, really?
I used to kiss the poster at good night every night.
Oh.
This is preteen,
Who was your favorite, Martha?
Oh, probably Paul at that time.
Interesting theory about the Beatles. If you're a fan for an extended time, you tend to have different favorite Beatles over the course of your life.
Yeah. It will probably change all the time. But I remember my sister and my cousin and my brother was younger than me. We were all into the Beatles, and we used to go down to the basement and play the Beatles. We put their music on. We each had to be somebody.
Yeah, of course.
And my brother had to be, because he was younger. We bossed him around. He had to be Ringo.
Oh.
He sat on the back of the sofa and played the drums.
Hey, Ringo's cool, man.
Ringo's cool. Well, you think about that. I mean, being Ringo in the Beatles is tough, but he's still Ringo.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Anyway, so 8 Days a Week is a good song.
Oh, it's a great song, but I mean, like it's
nice harmonies.
It's a tough pick, right? Because there's so many to choose from in the Beatles catalog, obviously.
Yeah, they're great songwriters.
The cool thing about this song is that it uses a fade in, and I think that was the first time a fade in was used in the history of pop music.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, it probably was actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did a lot of firsts.
Well, the feedback on
She's So Fine, was it? I Feel Fine.
Right, that's right. The first, I think Paul leaned a guitar or his bass against the amp, and I was going,
oh, yeah.
And that's what they used for the beginning, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that was the first use of feedback on a song.
Yeah, so there you go.
There you go.
Another first.
Mm-hmm.
Of many,
yeah. So, Mark, we're going to stay on the Beatles because we're going to move over to you now in your list. And you start your list with The Beatles' Tomorrow Never Knows. Yes,
well, what a groundbreaking song. Unbelievable. Like, it's still incredible because at that time, the Beatles and particularly Paul were absorbing all these influences from avant-garde, quote-unquote serious composers like Karlheinz Stockhausen and all the musique concrète guys from France. And so he'd go home and make tape loops and do, experimental things with his tape recorders and stuff. And that all went into that song. And, of course, George Martin was a huge influence on them that way as well. And so I think more than any other song up to that point, they kind of absorbed all these influences from, serious new music sources and put it into a pop song. And, that's pretty extraordinary. Like all those textures and the weird tape loops that are going on. And they had access to the BBC sound effects library too. So they were always, from that point on, they were always, whenever you heard a weird noise, it was likely from the BBC sound effects library. And Ringo's drum thing there, the pattern is great. That dum guk dum guk.
Yeah.
Fantastic, right? And then the droney. I mean, it was so far ahead of its time. I mean, nobody had done anything like that on pop music before that, and it just opened up, huge doors for everybody.
Yeah, because what is this, 66?
Yeah, I think so. So that was on Revolver.
It was Revolver, I think, yeah. So
yeah, the end song.
The technology that they had was minimal to work with,
I think it was still 4 tracks at that point.
Yeah. I think they had to bounce
so
tracks a lot.
Yeah, incredible what they were able to do with 4 tracks. And of course, the whole world of sampling has been with us for a while, but you could sort of view, the use of tape loops then as a very, early use of sampling, certainly in pop music,
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And the backwards guitars and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot to learn. Like, I think even when I was a kid and I had no idea what I was ever going to do with my life, but I was listening, I wanted to know, like, how they were getting these sounds. You were absorbing them as a listener, but you were also going, what are they doing there? Mm-hmm. How are they doing it?
Yeah, and they would go on to do a lot of other, you think about the White Album and all the stuff that went into that, just with all of the strange effects and inspiration.
And they were open enough to absorb that stuff. That's the amazing thing. A lot of musicians are, in some respects, very conservative because they have their skill set. And once they get out of their comfort zone, they don't regard strange things with much empathy or interest even. But the Beatles were smart enough to absorb all these things that were coming at them and then using them. And, we're the beneficiaries of all that.
Yeah, and they were just ahead of their time. I would call them visionaries just because they were doing this. Sure. They moved into, after this, their psychedelic period. The Stones followed them into that.
Yes, they did.
And so, yeah, they're just brilliant artists.
They also were, it was interesting because we were talking about the Beach Boys before. Pet Sounds came out as a reaction to.
Well, I'm not sure what you're going to say. You can say it.
I'll probably say it wrong. I always get dates and records wrong.
No.
Morris encyclopedia kind of mind. But I thought that Pet Sounds came out first.
Yeah.
And then they came out with Sgt. Pepper.
That's right.
Yeah, hey, I got it right.
Yeah.
I passed the mark test.
No, there was sort of a rivalry. And, when you listen to Back in the USSR on the White Album, that's a total parody of the Beach Boys.
That's right. Yes.
And it's brilliant, but it's also like an homage to the Beach Boys because obviously the Beatles recognized them for the huge talents they were too. So there was always a bit of back and forth there.
Exactly. Yeah, I love stories like that.
Nothing happens in a vacuum.
I love all the stories just because, excuse me, there are so many things going on, that as a listener you may not know, and you can kind of connect all the dots. You love all these songs, and it's fascinating to hear the backstories behind them.
Yeah.
It'll give you some depth into the song sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
Mark, you were telling me a story about somebody who went to a party with somebody and they were bored with the party or something. They went into the closet and wrote.
Oh, no, we heard that on the CBC yesterday. Are we allowed to mention CBC?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
No, it was a Chris Isaak story.
Oh, yeah, right.
And apparently he'd just broken up, and it wasn't Wicked Gane, his biggest song, but apparently he went to this big party just after he had broken up with somebody, and he didn't want to be there. And so he went into the front hall into a closet and closed the door to, I guess, hide.
Must have been a big closet.
It was. But there happened to be a guitar in there. And so he tuned it up and wrote this breakup song in the closet during this big party.
Oh, wow.
It's a good song, too.
And it was a good song. I wish I could remember the title, but it was a great song. And, of course, he's got that Roy Orbison kind of voice, so he's got this great voice anyway, and it was a really nice song. But wow, he wrote it in the closet in the middle of a big party where he happened to just find a guitar.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah, there are often a lot of really good stories behind the songs.
Yeah.
One of mine was that Paint by Number Heart, which was a song of ours on our Metro Music, our first album.
Yeah.
Every guy I knew who was a friend or had been a boyfriend or something thought it was about them. And the one guy it was about never asked.
Oh, really?
It was sort of like a bit of a put down of this one person.
That's really
funny.
And
he
didn't get it.
But everybody else thought it may have been about them.
Everybody else thought it was about them.
That song's about me, isn't it?
Yeah. I never told the guy who it was about.
Wow. That is funny.
But they're interesting stories because there was a lot of songs.
Oh,
they
yeah.
were told.
Yeah. Absolutely. Mark, Jimi Hendrix, Voodoo Child, Slight Return is next.
Yes, the closing song on Electric Ladyland.
Hmm.
There's been guitarists since Hendrix that are, more technical and can do faster runs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason he, in so many people's eyes, is still the top of the heap was, well, he wrote great songs. He's a great guitarist. But this one, for me, exemplifies his borderline chaos that he could generate on that instrument. And how he embraced that. To go back to that sort of conservatism in a lot of musicians, he didn't have that. And so this song, it just at some point just completely lets loose. And in the middle of it, you're going, okay, here's Mitch Mitchell, and it was Mitch Mitchell was the drummer. Was that the bass player?
No, I think it was the drummer.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the early characteristics of these early bands like Cream and Hendrix, and a lot of them, is that the drummers a lot of them were taught by jazz drummers. Mm-hmm. And so their drumming is like, if you watch the way they hold their snare, they hold them like jazz drummers.
That's right.
Hold their sticks.
Like that, hold their sticks rather, and, the proper way.
Yeah.
And they're not going gum, gung, gum, gum, gung, gum, gung. They're playing jazz, like jazz drumming over this guitar that's basically full of screeching atonal feedback.
That's right.
It's that song, and it's so well recorded. Like, the drums actually aren't that loud. The guitar is right up there, and when he lets loose in the middle of it, and he's doing all his Hendrixian tricks and stuff,
yeah,
you're just going, this is like Ornette Coleman or something. It's it's virtually on the cusp of complete abstraction. Mm-hmm. And he's okay with that. It goes beyond rock music, and it's just like it's like improvised, abstract new music.
Yeah. And
of course, the opening riff is fantastic. One of his like unbelievably recognizable riffs.
Yep. Yeah.
So yes, that one still makes my hair stand on end.
That's a great point you make about the drummers of the day, because people like Ginger Baker worshipped the jazz guys.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They were all of that age where when they were young, they were taking lessons, and that, there wasn't really rock music as we understand it from that period, because it hadn't happened yet,
Right.
So,
yeah. It was all big band stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, your next pick, Mark, I'm not familiar with this at all. Steve Reich, is it?
Yes. And this is going way out of the pop music field. And I had to laugh to myself about this, because I thought, well, Brent may know Steve Reich or not.
Yeah.
And, but this is a piece that was written, I think it came out in 1972. It's an hour long, and it's basically what a lot of people would call process music. So it's played by an ensemble of 18 musicians, and it's made up of largely percussion players like vibraphone, marimba,
wow,
mallet instruments, voice, bass clarinets, and organ. And what happens is his theory behind this was everybody starts playing one phrase. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, part of the band moves a certain number of beats ahead, but continue playing the same thing. But what happens is that out of this process comes a very complex kind of music that's still very rhythmic. Mm. And people, there's huge Steve Reich fans all over the world. I've seen Music for 18 Musicians 3 times.
Yeah.
He came to Massey Hall a few years ago and did it, and it's almost like a religious experience, because what happens over the course of the hour is these shifting polyrhythms start creating psychoacoustic things in your head that don't exist. So you're hearing the music, but it's also creating overtones that aren't really being played. They're being created by the interaction of the various phase changes in the music.
Wow.
It's extremely positive. It's extremely uplifting. It's transcendental, and it's probably not for everybody, but after an hour, the band, they end on a dime. Like it goes,
oh, wow.
And they're all reading this. They're reading music, and it's an extremely difficult piece to play.
Wow.
And I would urge anyone to just Google Steve Reich and listen to a bit of what he's done. He's considered a giant of late 20th century music, and he's still around and still doing great stuff.
Wow. Well, I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, check it out. And if you've got an hour, and I know a lot of people don't have an hour to do this, but if you're in the mood and you can put it on and turn out the lights and lie down on your sofa,
Mm-hmm.
you might really like it. Either that or you go, what was Mark talking about? Check it out.
Oftentimes late on Friday nights after everybody else goes to bed, I'll do that. I'll turn the lights down and pour myself a bourbon and put stuff like that on just to kind of zone out, So this is my new selection.
Yeah, and I'd be interested, like, if you do hear it and you like it, or if you don't like it, email us. I'd be curious to know what you thought about it.
Okay. I'm going to send you a note.
Good or bad.
I'm going to take you up on that. Yep. I will do that for sure. I promise. Okay.
All right.
Joe Stafford. I know this one. The Nearness of You. This is Hoagie Carmichael, I believe, right? Who wrote this?
That's right. Yeah.
It's like he wrote Stardust. He was one of the old Brill Building guys. George on My Mind.
He was a prolific writer, and this one is very close to my heart.
Mm-hmm.
My dad used to sing it to my mom.
Ah, that's nice.
In his quavery voice.
Yeah.
And my dad, it was strange because you might say he was tone deaf. It's hard to tell because sometimes he'd be right on key and then inexplicably would drift.
Mm-hmm.
And it was you go, why did he suddenly go into the key of X? I don't know. But he was very heartfelt about it. And I grow up listening to him sing this song, and, it's a beautiful song. And I think Joe Stafford's version is my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like Judy Garland, she may not have been like the most dazzling singer, but if you listen to that particular recording, her feel for that song is phenomenal, and her phrasing is fantastic.
I like that you were discriminate about that because a lot of people have done this song. Annie Lennox has done this, Bing Crosby, Etta James.
Laura Jones.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah. Like, I would say upwards of 30, 40. There's a lot of versions of this, but I like that you picked that one for that reason.
Yeah, she sang it like it was coming from some super deep part of her.
Mm.
The same way Judy Garland sang Over the Rainbow. Like there might have been other, Ella Fitzgerald or who else might have done it, and those would have been great versions too. But there was just something that hit your soul listening to that and made that song come alive.
Yeah. One of the great things about music is sometimes the imperfections make it perfect, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. Well, people, I've talked about this. Like, I feel that, and there's other people that would agree, I'm sure, and I've said this before, that limitations are what create a style.
Mm-hmm.
If you can do anything, and if you can sing anything, or you're the master of an instrument, that's a whole other sort of category of music and playing and ability. But I've noticed sometimes, like when a really great guitarist does his first solo album and he picks a whole bunch of songs to cover,
mm-hmm.
you kind of go, well, is this an album where you're showing off all the different styles you can do, or is this coming from you?
Mm.
And sometimes somebody with lesser abilities has more of a style because they're limited to what they can do. And by doing so, there's sort of more resonance and more, I wouldn't say legitimacy because that's not what it is. It's more currency and more feeling.
Yeah.
You're not just going, oh, they can hit that note. So, and, in the end, so what, right?
Yeah.
It's about feel.
Yeah. That's actually a good little credo. I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot. Because you're right. It can add character.
Yeah. When you can do everything, then how do you know when to stop?
That's a good point. It's true.
Or limit yourself. And, I think we didn't get to the fifth song yet, but I could talk about Robert Fripp as a guitar player.
Yeah, well, let's go to that one. So Robert Fripp, the song is King Crimson's 21st Century Schizoid Man. Yeah,
which was their very first album, which was 1968.
Mm-hmm.
You would be too young for this, but you might know the album cover. There's like a big red screaming face on it.
Yeah.
And I remember, going into Sam the Record Man the downtown Toronto store that was a landmark for many, many decades, and going, what is that? And then hearing it, and it seems it's probably something I wouldn't have picked, except we're living in strange times, and it's almost like the song could have been written about Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Because it's basically a description of, a 21st century schizoid man. And I think it might have been, if not the first version or the first instance of somebody deliberately distorting their voice, it must have been one of the earliest versions where Greg Lake's vocals are completely distorted and he's going 21st century, So it's quite scary. And then there's a whole middle section with Fripp's strange, elongated guitar. And Fripp, is a technically brilliant guitarist, but when he wants to be, he can be super simple.
And it can be very funny sometimes, too. Tell him about the Sunday lunch thing.
Oh, yeah. Nowadays, during COVID, he and his wife, Toya Wilcox, who is quite a star in the UK as well, they do this online thing called Robert and Toya's Sunday Brunch, and they do cover songs, and they're
hilarious.
Absolutely hilarious. Because
funny to watch.
You may or may not know how, Fripp has generally been regarded as a pretty intense kind of serious, very serious guy. And I don't know whether it's just his age now and he doesn't care, or Toya has opened him up somehow. But
so dance on the top of a table or something, or he does all sorts of comedic things. Yeah, very
un-Fripp-like.
Oh, I had no idea. Yeah, because I knew he was very. He was almost like rigid. He played with Bowie for a little while, right?
Yeah, and we met him. He came to see us play when our first gig outside of Toronto. We played in New York, and he came to see us and found it utterly terrifying because I was a huge King Crimson fan all through my high school years.
Yeah.
And then all the subsequent stuff he did with Fripp or with Brian Eno, and it's just done amazing things. The Frippertronic stuff. And there he was, in his little black suit with a little thin tie, like 20 feet off the front of the stage with his arms folded across his chest. And I'm going, oh my God, it's like Robert Fripp.
Later on, his wife, Toya Wilcox, did a cover of Echo Beach. So it all comes around.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah. That's really cool.
It did pretty well with her version, I think.
She still plays, because she does a lot of, not
she did.
She's, not with COVID, but she was a pretty heavy touring act, and she still plays it live when it's possible to do so.
That's a nice tribute.
Yeah, it's always very rewarding to see somebody else do a version of one of your songs.
Absolutely. Well, it's a great song, you guys. Jeez. I mean, as I said at the top of the show, it's a true classic.
Oh, so I think the song has kept us going. I think without Echo Beach, the band probably would have broken up in the first year.
Well, I'm thankful for it. So that is the end of your songs, folks. I want to thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it. As I said, I'm a fan, and it's been a real pleasure to talk to you both.
I've enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, we really enjoyed it. It's I don't think we've ever had to come up with a list of songs and then talk about them. So it was a really great experience for us, too.
It was hard, too, to pick from just 5 songs
Martha,
all the songs you love.
It's impossible. It's really impossible. Yeah. Oftentimes people come back on the show with another 5, if people have been on the show 4 or 5 times. So, yeah, you can't.
It'd be easy to do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if you like talking music, it's a nice way to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you for doing it. I appreciate it. It was great speaking with you both.
You're welcome.
So stay on. I'm just going to wrap up the show here. Okay, this has been No Sleep Till Sudbury with Brent Jensen and my very special guests, Martha Johnson and Mark Gane of Martha and the Muffins. Till next time, folks, take good care.
Brent Jensen is the best-selling author of No Sleep Till Sudbury, Leftover People, and All My Favorite People Are Broken. All titles available in stores and on Amazon worldwide.